I'm more nostalgic
And
about old gameplay design than actual graphics or anything. Like, it's just, there's such a lean towards infinity games, just games that you play forever, to the point where they're making genres that aren't meant for that also that. And I'm just like, man, like the fact that like, I know there's like 100 other reasons to be mad, obviously, but the fact that people wanted Overwatch 2 to be Destiny and not Left 4 Dead, when that's clearly what the game is actually, like, that's clearly the strong suit of everything that I've actually made about Overwatch multiplayer campaign stuff. It clearly, its strong suit would be to be some kind of like Left 4 Dead style thing where you're playing these campaign missions and there's some variability to how they play out and you can play them as different characters, but like, it's a co-op like struggle session. You'll have to get from point A to point B collectively and together, and things will try to disable you and so on. Like, that's clearly the strength of the game, and Left 4 Dead never would have benefited from being Destiny and having orange guns and purple guns and stuff. Like, so the fact that that's what people are sad about, I'm like, I just don't see people thinking about the actual points of, or strengths and weaknesses of video games anymore, and like what the intended gameplay style is, because they just want Skinner boxes and progressions and microtransactions, and like the horse armor became the core gameplay at some point instead of the thing to be mad about.
People want to play games with their brains turned off. Like, that's what they're like, oh, I work a hard job and I come home and I want to sit down on my couch and I want to see the numbers go up. And it's like, all right, cool. But you know,
that's what MMOs are for.
The price we pay.
I think in regards to Overwatch, and I don't know that we talked about this one. We talked last week or a couple of weeks back about this. They had the plan, the original plan when they made Overwatch was to have 3 distinct games, and that they release, and the next one sort of encompasses the previous one. And I think that's what Keller meant when he said we're going to redefine the sequel. And I haven't seen many people talk about this, but basically, what I understand, and people have talked about this that I'm about to say, is the crawl, walk, run development cycle or development ethos that not Obsidian, what's the name of the company? Blizzard. That Blizzard had with Overwatch. Their idea was that Overwatch 1 was going to be the sort of Counter-Strike, the style game that Overwatch is. That then it would allow them to make a sort of looter, shooter, grinder game similar to Destiny or something like that. That would be their second iteration. And then they would come to the full fruition of their vision, which would be an MMO style shooter, which would be the run, so the crawl, walk, run cycle that I mentioned. And I think that's what Keller meant by redefining the sequel, was being like, okay, you think this is going to be a sequel to this game, but actually we just had so much more in store for you. And like this super mega hit that Overwatch 1 is just like the multiplayer mode of our game, or the player versus player mode of our game. Which I don't think that's a good idea, honestly. No. Because it shapes, like, when you release such a niche kind of mode of your game first, it shapes the perception of the public has of your game. It's not completely. Like imagine Resident Evil releasing their multiplayer mode first and then the campaign.
Imagine Outbreak being the first Resident Evil game.
Yeah. Well, there's just a struggle where like everyone in Overwatch as a character is pretty much all designed specifically around having really specific strengths and weaknesses and mobility and like pacing. The characters all have pacing to how they play moment to moment, and and like the uptime and downtime you need to have in order to make them not just melt constantly and so on. Like, they're so specifically designed to be what is, in my opinion, one of the most compelling multiplayer versus experiences that does exist. Like, it's really, really interesting how these characters can interact. And like, the moment you play a really grindy PvE situation, like when I played certain PvE levels that have come out in the past for Overwatch, and they make me play Ashe, and I'm like, oh, wow, you sure feel how long she has to reload when it's not the downtime between fights in a PvP game, but is instead like Like it's not like in a PvP match, it's like, here's how many bullets I have to try to end this fight, essentially. And she has like she's like 12 or 15. It's a lot, and like there's only so many enemies.
13, I think.
And so like it changes every week.
Yeah, that's true.
It's been all of these numbers.
It used to be, yeah, it used to be 15.
But like she has a bunch of bullets and she can two-shot a lot of characters and so on, and it's like it's a punishment for failing to finish the fight, essentially, is that you now have to reload, and she reloads one shot at a time. Very, like, not as slow as some games, but still it's the longest reload in all of Overwatch.
Yeah, it's like 9 seconds or something.
But it makes perfect sense in a PvP game. It makes perfect sense in a PvP game. In a PvE game where you fight waves of robots for like 10 minutes straight, it hits you hard that you're like, oh, I didn't even like fuck up. I just have to ration reloading into my constant playstyle of this game in a way that no other character has to, because this game is now endless robot waves instead of PvP, and that's fundamentally a different context to play this character in. And do I want to play this character in this mode? And so like the idea of turning the game into a grindy MMO that's about repetition robs so many of those characters of their fun in a way that like making it like a survival horror is obviously not correct terminology, but like giving it that like survival horror struggle vibe of like a Left 4 Dead co-op experience, where like, yeah, we've at least those of us that have had a chance to actually play them in the tiny windows they exist because of how stupid video games are now, that have played the PvE missions on hard together and experienced like the struggle of like, oh fuck, I gotta get my teammates back up, and oh, it's like the dominoes that start falling when one person
really
goes down. Like
those are really hard missions.
Like having it be a cool co-op struggle is way more interesting than turning into some boring MMO that is inherently about turning off your mind and just repetitively playing for hundreds of hours and robbing all of these characters of their identity and probably giving them upgrades that smooth over all of their weaknesses to the point where they don't have a personality to begin with. Like, can't wait to see. Like, I think, like, were people looking forward to 500 health tracer? Like, is that what they were hoping? Like, grinding and upgrades would do? I'm looking forward to
500 health tracer. Let me have 500 health tracer with a 120 clip round clip, please.
I honestly think that they focus so much on the upgrades and buffs. Like, I think it was a whole. I don't really see that it would have been very enjoyable to me. I would have preferred something like, I don't know, maybe Ash picks up Soldier 76's gun and just has the coach gun and Soldier 76 gun, or Farah all of a sudden.
I want Tracer with Farah's rockets.
Yeah, so like Anna picks up the suit from Farah and just starts flying all over the shop with her sniper.
Those combined character mods.
Things like that. Like, that would be more interesting in the sense that like it would still allow customization and progression, but at least it would allow you to just sort of experiment a little more. Obviously, we're talking about a game that is never going to exist, but I feel that I totally agree with you that it's the characters are designed for PvP, and them trying to use the same design for PvE is the folly, is bad.
There's ways to at least try to do it, but they have to be about interesting controlled engagements that are about reading your enemy and figuring out how to interact with them, as opposed to what most MMOs are, which is just fucking mindlessly chugging away at like Diablo style at just hordes of things and getting rewarded.
But even that,
there's also a question of onboarding. Is like, do the players?
Oh, that's their biggest weakness.
Yeah, like what Colonel I think is talking about as well is like, if the sequel is always going to be a bigger, redefined game experience where it like expands into a wider net of gameplay mechanics and modes, investors, especially at companies like this, are always asking like, how do we capture a new audience? How do we make sure that people know how to play this? How do we make sure that the player base keeps coming back? And the answer is always tiered onboarding of like, okay, we'll teach the players how to play this way. And then there'll be, the new mode will be added. And then they'll learn how to play that one based on how they know how to play the original. And then there's this idea of like exponential growth. I mean, go figure, this is like late capitalism, but this idea that this exponential growth will always continue moving upward because of the assumption that people who played the first game will always move forward, and then new people will not be lost in that. So you get this weird sort of funnel approach to design that I think creates these cascading issues that you see.
It's what especially with things what like would have been so good about having a good PvE mode and not a shitty grinding thing, but like an actual real mode that's available to everyone that plays the game and actually works on some level. Is it like that would have been an onboarding thing? Like that would have been a chance to, in a less stressful context, try out characters and get a feel for how the game can play, and then take that into PvP the way that you do like a shooter campaign in like Halo and so on. It's like I desperately wanted a campaign for so many of these things, and what I struggled with was the fact that like they even had this really specific, interesting mechanic that where they were like, okay, when you start playing Overwatch, you're not an Overwatch 1 player, which means that none of us have actually experienced it for the most part. But brand new Overwatch 2 players, their roster is locked to only a handful of characters, and as they play, more of the characters unlock. And I'm like, that would have been good for the PvE mode if it existed. Yeah. like funneling people into the simpler characters like Pharah and Soldier, and then slowly like pulling that back and having the primary feeling of progression, instead of being some sort of stupid grinding, instead be there's even more insane characters to try now. Would have been really compelling, but we're never getting that approach to that game, and it's so frustrating.
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying there. I do think that there's one thing, and I don't mean to interrupt, but I really want to make sure that this is said. This is what you are saying is true, Keith. This does sound like a great idea. But there is also the problem that there has, and I'm going to say this very broad strokes, but it's not wrong. There has never been a competitive PvP multiplayer game whose single player accurately trains people how to play that PvP game. It has never happened. It has never existed. And it is an impossible golden egg that studios have been chasing for 30 years.
I don't think they do. Well, Blizzard doesn't chase that. I don't like. No. I was going to say that.
I agree.
I was going to talk about
this. Shows they very purposefully are not chasing that anymore.
But like I was going to talk precisely about that. There's the biggest progression that you can make in Overwatch. Like obviously, learning the characters is important. But I think it's more important understanding fundamental. And when I say Overwatch, I mean I really mean any shooter. But the fundamental pacing and principles, or the fundamentals of a shooter, basically. Things like what peeking out of hard cover means, using hard cover, having an escape plan, or understanding
to opponents.
Understanding what the opponent is going to do, what the opponent is thinking, how to exploit off angles, or what flanks are good for, like basic stuff that no game ever teaches you, and you need to look up other people that actually know all this stuff because they talk, and they're like either pro players or they're just very experienced good players. Like I played for I said this before, I played like 200 hours of Lucio, and I really didn't need to know a lot of that stuff because Lucio's gameplay style is so different from everybody else in the roster. But also like Blizzard never teaches anybody that. Like earlier today I was playing in quick play. I get matched up with many different people, but I was playing support, and my Sojourn was Grandmaster. I didn't know she was Grandmaster until we talked. But basically we engage, and I was trying to take an off angle with Kiriko. Kiriko she can teleport, so you can risk those off angles, and you just see Sojourn getting out of cover while being shot at and dropping down into the open space, and I'm like, okay, that's the bronze player. I just you see that a lot in quick players. That's just the noob, right? And I immediately disregarded her as it's another one. I'm not gonna go out of my way to pocket her or anything. and we lost that round. We were just it didn't go too well. So what she was failing to do, or at least failed to in that particular moment that I paid attention, was using hard cover and having an escape plan. And the Sojourn can sort of rocket jump, so the escape plan was kind of there, but she just died immediately. It was terrible move because she's long range. You can just stay behind cover. It's fine. And then she said, "Can somebody go Mercy to pocket me?" In quick play, which is a little bit weird. I just said, "No, you're suicidal." And I just went with the Kiriko again. And she checked up my my rank, and I'm gold. and she was like, "Hey, you're gold, lol," or whatever. And I'm like, I blocked her immediately. I don't have time for that. After the game, I went and checked her rank, and what like she's masters. It's masters, not grandmasters. She's grandmaster because she has good aim. So if you can good aim carries you, and I'm sure she does. I mean, I'm sure she wasn't carried to masters or anything, but absolutely happens that different people have different skills, and in particular, aim can carry you so much in Overwatch 2 in particular rather than Overwatch 1, because Overwatch 1 relied a lot more on playstyle, on team playstyle. But like the game doesn't require you. It's not even about teaching. The game doesn't require you to learn basic stuff like taking cover or not dropping or not being suicidal or staying up time or regrouping or understanding when a team fight is lost. And you watch the top 500 players, and they do that like it's second nature to them. They don't even they don't even talk about, oh, let's kite this ult, or let's just sort of like, we lost our Ana, let's give up a little bit of space so that we can wait for Ana to respawn. Like, so they sometimes do, but like it's so innate to them that they understand the game in a completely different level. And then new players are just like W keying into the fray, and if they die, it's because their healers didn't heal them.
I mean, Overwatch gives you zero tools to learn the game whatsoever. Like, they just give you 500 characters, and then you play some matches and you win or lose, and you don't know why. Like, that's why.
And nobody knows.
Toaster couldn't play the game anymore because he's like, I can't tell if I'm winning or losing because of me, or how to change, or what impact I'm having on the round, and so on. And like, I was playing yesterday with Jericho, and like, we had so many just suicidal Reinhardts just charging. They would spawn, immediately charge out of spawn, and then charge around corners and just disappear into the enemy team and then die instantly over and over again. And and invariably they tend to be they end the round by losing, getting play of the game, and blaming their team, because the feedback of the game is so bad that in moments like that, like, it's like, okay, well, they're feeding and they're playing terribly and they're the only tank, so they're literally sabotaging their entire team. But if they get the right 20 seconds of swinging into the entire enemy team just enough without being wiped out immediately, they instantly lock in play of the game, because it's just a flat scoring system without context.
Especially if they use their ult.
It's like, they desperately need to change the play of the game algorithm, because I know that's part of the identity of the game, so they don't want to get rid of it. But like, one, it should probably only be given to people who win that round, and two, it should probably be in some sort of close proximity to scoring a point or making some kind of actual objective progress, because
it's like
a Reinhardt can charge into the enemy team and never even push the objective a centimeter, but because they had enough people stood in their hammer at the same time, even if they didn't necessarily kill them, it's like enough damage collectively that it's like, congratulations, play of the game. You were the good player. Everyone else was bad, is what the game's telling the person who actively sabotaged the match. And I'm like, that's one of the only pieces of feedback the game gives you, and you can't learn from it. And similarly, like the scoreboard is not useful.
Oh, that's bad. Yeah,
you're not the same person.
I think about this all the time.
You're not Halo Man. You're not old John Spartan Halo Man with the same tools and things available to you. So people will be like, why does Mercy have low healing? It's because Mercy has low healing because we're winning this match currently, and she's damage boosting the whole time, and that's not on the leaderboard. Why does Widow have low damage? Because Widow kills people in one hit, and you can't do more health. You can't do more damage than somebody's health bar if you kill them in one hit. The people with high damage aren't killing people effectively. They're just spamming damage, and it's getting healed. And like, but like that, it takes 10 minutes just to explain how many things are wrong with people's core assumptions. Like, I've had matches where I'm yelled at for being Baptiste, and all I'm doing is healing, and I'm told that, and people are complaining that I'm not healing. And it's like, I can't help but tell you, I just have to tell you this, that like, this isn't an MMO. The supports cannot just look at a tank and choose that to not let them die, essentially, the way that you, like, that's not how MMO healing works either, but that's almost how it works by comparison to Overwatch. Like, you essentially functionally make the tank stay up forever, because they mostly stand still and cycle cooldowns, and they don't have to like do what you do in Overwatch as a tank. Like, tanks are not just a thing that soaks infinite damage, and the support, if the supports are doing their job, you just never die and you win.
Orisa.
Not even Orisa. Jericho and I got to see an Orisa that just runs forward and attacks endlessly, and it is hell.
Well,
it does not work.
That's a bad Orisa.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I'm saying. Is there's so much more that goes into tanking than that. And there's so much more that goes into healing, and you only get even begin to start getting an understanding of how to play the game when you play every role the way I do, and you start to get it. And I'm not saying I'm a master of the game in any way, but I understand a lot more about why things are failing a lot of the time, and the difficulties each individual character faces, because like the entire game is so asymmetrical, and not in like it's a 5-on-1 monster game, but like, no, it's like there are 33 separate characters that don't play like each other, and you need to learn all of them to understand what's happening to your teammates. Like every game just devolves into a fundamental misunderstanding that you don't have time to explain, but also if you try to explain it, people will just be mad at you. Because I was like, I even tried to explain that in that match. I'm like, okay, I'm sorry, but like I'm literally only healing, and that like a support character can't just choose to make someone unkillable. That's not how this works. Like you have to also mitigate damage yourself and think about sight lines and their big brain super thought was like, oh, you're playing Baptiste, you can literally make someone not killable. Like it's yes, one little circle that exists for 2 seconds and has 5 feet of range, and you walk out of that's invulnerability. Thanks for zeroing in on the core of this discussion and not like a pointless dead end that just kills the discussion and when no one of us learn anything and we don't fix the problem. It's such a struggle. Like I just want to play with the same 2 people forever.
Yeah, I mean they are introducing a mode where it's only 5v5, it's only groups of 5, and that's looking interesting. But you're totally right in saying that people don't understand why they lose. The game doesn't teach them that. That's the problem. It's not the people's fault, although some people are jerks and then it's their fault. But like it happens often to me that when I play support, I always try to synergize with the tank first, unless we have a fire or something, and then I go Mercy. Unless I'm just grinding battle pass experience, in which case I go Mercy because it's a no-brain. But the amount of times I'm playing Kiriko or Ana and like nobody is killing the back line, just nobody is shooting the back line. The back line is the back line of the enemy is all the way in the back, especially in attack. This happens a lot. And so like there's a Kiriko and an Ana all the way in the back, just healing the DPS and healing the tanks, and nobody's attacking that. And there's a Junkrat spamming chokes or whatever. There's a Genji trying to not die or whatever. And they eventually dying, because obviously when it's a war of attrition, it's difficult to keep up. And people are like, you're not healing enough. And I switch to Zen. I go Zen, and then I start attacking the back line and doing like right hand, a right click, which is like a full volley of projectiles that mostly insta kills anybody that is not paying attention to you. And I just kill their Ana and like open the fight all of a sudden. And with Zen, you mostly only need 1 or 2 throughout the game. Mostly only need 1 or 2 kills to really make a difference. Obviously, Zen does so much damage, is incredible, but like because there's no damage drop off and your DPS is already putting pressure on so many people, nobody's looking at you, so you just kill their backline and it's great. Obviously, it doesn't work all the time because I'm not the best player ever, but people ask you need more heals, and I go into the character that heals the least, and then we win. This happens a lot. Like I would say, when I switch to Zen, half the time we win because I switch to Zen, and the other half the time there's nothing you can do. But yeah, it's just people thinking one thing because the game, if they press tab, it shows that you heal less, right? So that's not good. Zen is not good, but no, it opens the fight.
One of the things I think about with this sort of thing as well, in like just teaching people how to play a game in a way that's hard, and obviously I'm going to go back to fighting games because they're the genre I'm good at, but like Street Fighter V launched disastrously. It had no story mode. Its arcade mode was like a 8-round survival game. Like it wasn't even arcade mode, it was survival. So you like go into each round with less health, depending on how you get hit and stuff. It was just online, basically. It's like all you could do was online and versus. And this was terrible for Street Fighter as a commercial product, because people tell themselves, you know, oh, I just want to play the single player. Like, I just want to play arcade mode and I want to practice before I go online. But in reality, like single player modes like that, like arcade mode and, you know, or like an adventure mode, like in a Smash game or something like that, are really, really, really bad ways to practice, because they will teach you really bad habits and you won't be checked by them. And it creates a system where players who go online do really well in single player, and they're like, oh, like, I mean, this happens in Smash all the times, but like Smash players will be like, oh yeah, like I bet I could win like a Smash tournament. Like I can beat level 9 CPUs. I do 4 versus 1 or 3 versus 1 on a level 9 CPUs, and I beat them all every time. And then they go to their first local and they get absolutely mollywalloped by someone who can just fucking space their moves and like who can like punish, and that's all you have to do. And so it's like a forever problem of people. It all boils down to ego is like a really big thing. It's like people think they deserve wins and they don't like to feel quote unquote embarrassed. And so they're hesitant to play the game as it is designed. And this goes for all multiplayer games. Doesn't matter if it's Team Fortress 2, doesn't matter if it's the Street Fighter, if it's Guilty Gear, if it's Smash. No one likes losing in a thing, especially if they think they're good at something, because it challenges their perception of themselves and where they land. But it creates this issue where now developers are chasing this idea of like, okay, so we need this single player to cater to people and it will be our onboard into our multiplayer. But there has never actually been a good onboard experience from a single player campaign to an online campaign. And granted, new fighting games, at least like Street Fighter, do a really good job of having like combo trials that actually teach you like, this is your punish that you use on like a counter hit. This is what you want to use when you're like spacing people out. This is what you want to use when you're doing X, Y, or Z. And there are like character guides and stuff that teach you. They're all part of the single player campaign. But in the end, like truly, there's always going to be a gap between how people approach things in the privacy of a solo mode or a single player campaign and how they approach them when they're online. And I just don't know if there's any way to actually bridge that gap. I think that World Tour mode, the new campaign in Street Fighter 6 is getting pretty close to doing about as good as one can do, but it still is going to teach people bad habits, because nothing in single player, like there's no way to program an AI that thinks like a human in terms of a fighting game. Like you all they can really do is just make the AI predict your moves faster or like read your inputs better and block better and stuff like that. Like, but that doesn't actually map to what is good and what makes your counterplay good in an actual PvP match. I mean, I think that Overwatch especially, but like all first-person shooters, especially competitive shooters, have that problem where it's like you will always run up to a genuine logistics issue of like no one has cracked AI that thinks like humans do, and PvP and playing against other people is all about understanding those other people and understanding what their goals are and understanding what they're going to try to do. And
yeah, it's the struggle that's happened since I was 8 years old and played Age of Empires 2 and beat the entire campaign. And they're like, this was a fun game about slowly building up 100 farms and 1 billion troops and then bulldozing the map. And then cutscenes happen sometimes. And then you play online and you get slaughtered in 3 minutes. You're like, by like Imperial cavalry. And I'm like, I'm not even in the Stone Age yet. Yeah, I don't understand what's happening. I mixed up password and username when I was making my account. I'm never playing this game again. It wasn't. It needs to be called password and username. They were like ID and something. Like there was like 2 different other words, and I couldn't tell which one was which. All I remember is that once upon a time I named my Age of Empires account E5G3 because I thought I was making up a password. And I played 1 round and got slaughtered instantly and never played an online RTS again. And like,
definitely.
And yeah, like they don't tend to
is
prepare you for anything.
example.
But the most they can do is get you comfy playing the video game. Like Halo campaign does not prep you for Halo multiplayer exactly, but it does make you familiar with every weapon in Halo and how to use all of them, and it slots not that unnaturally into hopping into Slayer, where you then just fight other Halo mans with those guns in some maps that are different from the campaign ones, but they're still just maps, so you just kind of go.
Yeah. But I think a real-time strategy definitely could. I mean, it's not as hard of a genre as it used to be, but it definitely could have an onboarding for new players, for multiplayer specifically, that at least gives them a sense of what's going on.
And what to expect, yeah.
And what to expect, yeah. So like having a mode where you see your like optimal resource growth and what you like, and have always a graph on screen showing you a bar going up and the bar of your actual resources going up, so you can compare yourself to what other opponents that are playing optimally are going to get, because that's a big thing with resource based RTS.
Here's your progression cap, how to get there.
Yeah. So like people make decisions based on things like, okay, I like this strategy because it gets me a little bit fewer resources by minute 7, but it allows me to scan the map a little bit better, and so they make decisions based on the map they're playing based on that, or make risky decisions based on the player that they're playing against or the race or whatever. And like that's so far out of the anything the game teaches you. Just the games could just show you like what you should be doing, which is, you know, having resources, at least in the case of StarCraft, is just having a lot of resources that have a lot of units, and having like it's not really about actions per minute so much as having a plan. Because if you're like thinking, oh, do I want an SCV?
Actions per minute matters.
Going for maximal utility and stuff, yeah.
That's why a game like Overwatch is just so insane, because it's like, its tutorial is basically like, here's Soldier, here's how you walk and shoot in a first-person shooter. Okay, ready for multiplayer, go. like they don't even begin to introduce like no part of like every single basic, just the most basic elements. Like, what is a team fight? What is regrouping? Like what is like what is resetting? Like, why would you intentionally die to make the next fight start sooner, and so on? All of those basic concepts do not exist in the video game we're playing. And it makes no attempt to teach you that. You have to go like, and since you can't like learn it from other players in a match, you just have to like know to check out a YouTuber that has the right advice and hope they're the most right one to learn how the community thinks, and then still always go forward hoping that at least some of the people in that match have also watched that YouTuber and have the same understanding of what game you're supposedly playing, because you can never stop to talk to anyone because it's a fucking melange of random people you've never seen before and never will see again.
But they should have stuff for that. I understand that some ethereal concepts are very difficult to onboard to a worldwide audience, but basic stuff like, Orisa, please don't 1v5 with your ult, you are going to die. Everybody else is dead, please do not press Q. Or Moira, it's Orisa's and Moira's, they always do that. Glaze my hole, and everybody's dead. Like, there she goes. It's so happy.
You should say glaze my hole.
I don't know what she says.
Oh my god. It's a family podcast.
One of the things that I think about recently with regards to this, though, is I've been playing some extraction shooters with Andrew, because we're both interested in Marathon when it comes out, and I want to understand the genre. So I played the tutorial of Rainbow Six Extraction, and it's just incredible how much better it is than most like first-person shooter tutorials. Same with Hunt Showdown. Like the tutorial of that game teaches you how to play that game, and I was like genuinely impressed by it. I was like, wow. Like, I'm not going to be good at this immediately off the bat, but like I feel like I understand what's happening and like how to make decisions and stuff. Yeah,
because it gives you like a bot match that actually explains like moment to moment, like, okay, here's like how you track the monster, and here's what it's like to fight the monster, and blah blah blah.
Yeah,